Hello everybody, all of you who are listening and or watching this. This is your friend Jay, and I'm here to talk to you guys about something that is extremely nerdy. And I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. So, this nerdy thing that I want to talk to you guys about is a theory that I have. This theory. And this theory is basically a combination of two things that I really love. The first thing is Magic the Gathering. I don't know how many of you have heard about it, but Magic the Gathering is a trading card game, one of the most successful in the world, and it is very fun and very awesome. But there is a flavor aspect that goes along with this game, and by flavor I mean story-wise, sort of. It's shown in the mechanics as well, but it's kind of the center of the game, story and mechanical wise. And what it is that there are 5 colors of magic in the entire universe of Magic the Gathering. And these 5 colors are white, blue, black, red, and green. Each one of these colors sort of has a set personality that represents it, like some attributes, characteristics about it that it has. Its culmination of it is unique, but it does share some attributes with the other colors. There are some things that it agrees on with other colors. There are also things that it disagrees on with other colors. And there are also a few things about the color, not many, but there are a few things about each color that is unique to each color. I am obsessed with this idea of these 5 colors of magic, and there are actually a lot of articles, which I will link in the description as a source of information for you guys, that are written about this by the people who actually run the game. It's what they call color pie theory, because it's like a color pie. It's each piece of pie, they're like a little wedge goes in. It's a whole thing. It's just a little naming tactic for it. But this color pie theory, it's something that I love. I love talking about it. I love thinking about it. I love putting people that I know somewhere along the color pie, where they fit, which attributes they exude. I love matching it up to lots of things, which leads me to my next aspect of this nerdy thing that I want to discuss with you guys, and that is Always Sunny in Philadelphia, which I'm sure a lot more of you know about, because that is just an awesome, amazing show. If you have not watched it, it is on Netflix. Go watch it now, the entire show. It's amazing. It's an amazing show that everybody should watch no matter what. And in this show, there are 5 main characters. There is Mac, Dennis, Frank, Dee, and Charlie. And my nerdy theory that I have here, this nerdy thing I want to talk to you about, that I've come up with, is that each one of these main characters from Always Sunny in Philadelphia match up with each of the colors in Magic the Gathering. And, well, that's my crazy theory. And I'd like to try and prove to you guys that it's true. Because now that I've mentioned it, and I've watched the episodes with this, and now that I have the idea in my brain, and it's germinated, it's stuck into me, it's grown into this thing that I cannot unsee. It is there every time I watch now. Every single time I see an action that any of the characters, the main characters in the show that is, anytime they take an action, I just immediately say, oh, it's because of this. It's because they are this color, and it's tied to how they do this, and how this color does this, and it's a whole thing. But allow me to try and prove to you guys that this is true. So, I already stated the 5 colors, and as you guys know, there are the 5 characters of Always Sunny in Philadelphia: Mac, Dennis, Frank, Dee, and Charlie. Now, these 5 characters match up in that order with the colors that I matched. So, my theory is that Mac is a white character. Dennis is a blue character. And then Frank is black, Dee is red, and Charlie is green. And basically I'm gonna go through in this first initial part how they each separately represent that. I'm gonna bring up examples of that. So first, why not? Let's start with Mac, the top of the color pie, as they call it. Mac is a character that he's very, how do I put it? He's very annoying. I mean, come on. You guys have seen the show, right? You know that he's annoying. He says something and you're like, wow, why would anybody think that or do that? Or he'll do something and you'll say, wow, that is incredibly stupid. Why would anybody do that? But there's still a pattern to it. There's like a structure to it. And this is how White operates. White in the game of Magic the Gathering is something that's about, it's the antithesis of change. It believes in being stagnant, being continuously what it is. What it is what it is, and that's it. There's no compromise. There's no, oh, maybe you're right. There's just, no, this is how it goes. And I have an example of this in Season 8, Episode 10, Reynolds vs. Reynolds, the Serial Defense. Great episode. Mac is the person who sort of takes over and commandeers this whole event that is happening, where it's basically a court case. He says that he's the judge and the bailiff, which is a very White attribute to be a judger, to look at somebody else and see what they're doing is whether or not it's morally correct or it's morally incorrect. You know, they're somebody who sets a standard. They like to have codes and laws. That's definitely something that White has. There's even certain characters in Magic the Gathering. There's a certain world, because there's multiple worlds, but again, don't worry, we won't get to that too nerdy stuff, unless, of course, you guys want me to, and I could do that in some other video. But on one of the worlds, there's these certain mages, and they're called law mages. They are wizards of this government system. They have a doctrine, they have a way they do things. They're basically the closest thing to the justice system inside an actual, like, magical world. It's a very interesting world, by the way, Ravnica. But they can actually cast spells that it's focused on, and it derives its power from the fact that these laws exist. And this is very much along the lines with Mac and his ideas of being a judge and a bailiff and somebody who wants structure and order in the world. In fact, in that very same episode, he has a quote, and it's one of my favorite quotes from Mac because I think it perfectly exudes his personality. And he says, and I quote, "I won't change my mind on anything, regardless of the facts that are set out before me. I'm dug in, and I'll never change." End quote. And that's how Mac is. That's him in a nutshell. He just refuses to change, and that is perfect for White, the antithesis of change. The hater of the sake of change for no reason. Just chaos. They don't like chaos either, definitely. But we'll get into that later when we start to talk about the other colors. The next character is Dennis. And Dennis matches up with Blue very much. Blue is methodical. They think things out. They plan ahead. They are all about potential and things becoming the best that they are, too. They like to have these ideas of grandeur even sometimes, which is, you know, if you've watched the show, you know for sure that Dennis is a character of just pure grandeur, pure big-headedness. They also like to have power and control over things. They like to be able to understand things and figure them out and be able to, you know, manipulate them sometimes. Dennis does this in a variety of ways. One example is the episode, Season 5, Episode 10, the Dennis System. And who's ever seen that episode probably knows where I'm going right away with this. The Dennis system is all about how Dennis has this certain way that he manipulates women into sleeping with them and then causing them to never like him again. He like detaches himself from it. You know, that way he can sleep with whoever he wants and then discard them. And this is pure blue. This is methodical. This is manipulative. This goes out of its way to control and to have these people under their control. Of course, there are other aspects of blue, and that's something too that I forgot to mention earlier, was that all of these colors, they have a good side and they have an evil side. But the thing is that obviously since these characters are evil, well, they're gonna exude the evil side of all of these colors. Everyone can be good and bad, you know, that's just like with any person. But It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is definitely not a show about good people. So they will all exude the cruel side, the cruel aspect of their color. And speaking of cruelty, that leaves us to Frank, the color black, which is a color that is all about cruelty. An example of this would be in Season 9, Episode 2, Gun Fever 2, Still Hot, where in the episode there's a focus on guns, which the reason they say Gun Fever 2 is because they talked about it in an early episode. But in this one, they bring up the issue again, and this time Frank's in the game. Since you know he came in late. And in this, it starts out, the very beginning of the episode, is where Frank is on the TV. He's at an interview. He's in a newsroom, and he's talking about how awesome guns are, and how everybody should go out and buy guns, and he even does a promotion for a gun store. And then you get all the way to the end of the episode, and it turns out that he actually didn't care about that at all. He was just trying to sell guns, because now he's on to water filters, and now he goes back on TV at the end, almost like a parallel to the beginning, and now he's saying, hey, water filters are important. Your water is tainted. And this perfectly fits black. Black is the color about exploiting things. They want to drain the resources that are from other things. They have greed, they have wealth. They want wealth. They want to control things, and they don't care who they have to knock out of the way in order to get there. Another example of this is the fact that Frank used to run a sweatshop in Vietnam. And, well, let's just say, sweatshops aren't nice, and they definitely do exploit people. And I won't do any spoilers for the new season that's out, because it's not out on Netflix, but let's just say you'll find out some very freaky stuff that Frank says about this sweatshop. And trust me, once you see it, you'll believe me that Frank definitely is a character that exudes the color black. Next up is Dee, who is red. Red is a color that's it's fiery. That's its symbol, is fire. So it's quick. It's quick to anger. It's quick to make a decision. It's quick to fall for things too and be gullible. It makes snap decisions, but it's also passionate and it cares about things. And this is exuded in Dee in her passion for things that, you know, sometimes leads her down wrong paths. She gets enraptured with an idea, gets caught up in it. And, well, speaking of that, one of my favorite episodes, because it's absolutely hilarious, is The Gang Broke Dee. Season 9, Episode 1. She is completely gullible in this. She falls for this entire joke that is set up for her. That Frank and Charlie and Mac all set up. They all pull her leg, and not only that, but while she's going through this entire joke, it gets to her head. She thinks that she's amazing. She's this blazing piece of glory that has risen so fast and just skyrocketed through everything. And she's willing to believe this because that's red. They believe that they're big, that they explode, and that they went for it. And not only that, but, well, Dee does actually explode at the end of the episode. So, how's that for a testament to her being red? And last, but certainly not least, is Charlie, who matches the color green. The color green is the color that shares most in common with all the other colors. As I said earlier, the colors disagree and agree on some things. All of them do. Every single one of the combinations has certain things they agree on and certain things they disagree on. And some of the combinations they agree on more, and some of the other combinations they disagree on more. What happens though with green is that green is all about unity. It's about nature. Its symbol is the tree. It's about things coming together and nature as a whole, because even if things disagree, they still all have their place. Which makes sense because then it shares with everything. And this matches definitely with Charlie because, come on, who doesn't like Charlie? Everybody loves Charlie. I'd say he's my favorite character, at the very least, the most likable character. The other characters, they all have their bad things, and Charlie isn't a perfect person either. Again, it's a show about bad people, but he's somebody who you can look at and be like, alright, his heart's in the right place. He does weird things, but that's just because he's weird, and he's okay with being weird, and that's how Green is too. Green's very okay with, whatever it ends up doing. But Green is also very good at what it does, Maybe Green isn't as smart as Blue, or isn't as organized as White, or is it as, willing to stand up for itself as Black, or willing to go off the beaten path as Red is, but what Green does it damn well. And this, which is one of the few episodes that I like more than The Gang Broke Dee, is Charlie Work, Season 10, Episode 4. This shows this very much. This attribute of being able to just know, I run this bar. I am the basis that holds everything up, which is another Green attribute. It's nature. It's the cradle in which we all live, and that's what he is for the bar. He does all the dirty work, all the Charlie work, kills all the rats, keeps everything running in its own weird, barely running way. And this episode shows that without him, the bar would be nothing, and yet they all take him for granted. Everybody does. And that's definitely a Green thing too. All the other colors are not willing to share. Green's about sharing though. That's its one center attribute. So, with all of that information in mind, keeping it in the forefront of your brain, I'd like to talk about the relationships of these characters, just to provide further evidence of this proof. It's easy enough to just match up the characters one to each color, which I hope I proved to you. You can also find other episodes as well as the links that I put in the description to further prove this, but I'd also like to talk about the relationship. And don't worry, I won't take too long. I know I already took quite a bit of your time, so I'll go through this pretty quickly. Just keep the stuff I said earlier in the front of your mind and think about it as I bring up this stuff, and hopefully I can present a good case here as far as this theory. So all of the colors interact in different ways. Colors that are right next to each other on the color pie are considered allied color combinations. Those are the color combinations that agree more than they disagree. The ones that are across from each other in the color pie are the enemy colored combinations. And these ones are color combinations that they usually they disagree on more things. So although they do agree, they do disagree on more than they agree, which, it's kind of the same with allied color combinations. They agree, but they do also disagree on some things. So this is the whole idea as far as the color combinations in the setting of Magic the Gathering. So I'll now explain how all of the relationships of these characters and how they run into each other in various points in the show, because they're always doing schemes with other ones, and sometimes other ones are missing, and usually whoever they're matched up with, I've noticed, kind of drives what direction their scheme will go in. One of the first examples that I'd like to to bring up is white and blue, Mac and Dennis. White and blue is a very interesting combination. Mac has his annoyingness, of course, and the thing is with white is that white's allied colors, they'll put up with white's annoyingness. You know, they'll be okay with it because one of the good things about white is that white, at the very least, is transparent. They're honest. There's not really any subterfuge in the things they're doing. They're doing it, and they're pretty obvious about why they're doing it. They're very upfront about things. So the two other colors that match, that are ally colors with them, kind of understand this. And this is how Dennis is with Mac. He's okay with Mac because Mac is very upfront about his patterns and how he acts, and Dennis is very okay with cataloging people's patterns and figuring out how they work. So Dennis loves this. He's an easy person to figure out. He's an easy person to understand. Mac likes Dennis because Dennis always has an eye for the order of things, you know, how things should be. They both have a very clear, strict idea of how the world works, and they want to uphold that. Because again, that's very part of White's thing. They like things that happen a certain way. They may have different reasons for doing that, but they can agree on that. This causes White Blue to have a very close relationship. This is one of the allied colors that shares a lot with each other. Mac and Dennis's relationship is literally brought up in an episode. Season 5, episode 9, Mac and Dennis break up. And again, this shows them as they're both undynamic versions. They're both undynamic colors. You know, they don't like change. They have a certain way of doing things. You know, blue wants to understand things, and white wants things to be a certain way. So they get in this rut, in this sort of relationship, and then they end up breaking up, and that's the whole aspect of it. And this is what happens with White Blue, is that sometimes they'll come to a disagreement, but they always come back together. They're a very close color combination, and not only that, but they both have very annoying attributes that the other colors just, they get sick of sometimes, you know, and they can't deal with it all the time. Conversely, though, for Mac, there's one of his enemy colors, a combination of Mac and Dee, white and red. White and red is an interesting combination. It has a similar tone to white and blue, where there's an order to it, but it's not so much understanding the patterns of things, but, you know, enforcing order. You know, red brings its sort of iron fist, you know, its willingness to push down and get in the muck and, you know, get out of my way, I'm gonna do it this way. And that makes them very militaristic, as far as that the one set that I was telling you about, Ravnica, the Law Mages, as they are the judges, which is white-blue. They are actually a white-blue organization. In Ravnica, there's the force, the actual police force. You know, there's the court, but there's the law, and then there's the order. White-red is the order. When red gets enraptured with the idea of white's order, and white likes the forcefulness and the ability to, you know, get stuff done. And this comes together and makes them a force to be reckoned with. Or in the case of Mac and Dee, just pretty pitiful. But hey, again, they're not the best people. An example of this is in Season 3, Episode 14. It's called Bums Making a Mess All Over. And in this, Mac and Dee go to, they notice the bums that are all around Philly, and they don't like them. They don't like the homeless. They're sick of them. They want to do something to clean them up, to get them out of there. And what happens is they go to a neighborhood meeting, you know, a local neighborhood meeting. But of course the local neighborhood meeting is, you know, talking about simple things, and we should do this, and pay attention to this, and watch out for this, and do a neighborhood watch. But, well, Mac and Dee aren't having any of it. They're like, we don't want to watch things, we don't want to stand here and just observe, we want to do. We want to get into the system and fix it. So they go out, and, well, Dee beats up a homeless person. Yeah, pretty brutal, huh? But this matches it very well. This matches this color combination. It just goes to show that they're willing to get out there and do what needs to be done, or in the case of them, just go out there and beat up some people, I guess. Anyways, another combination, we'll go back to another allied color combination, is Dennis and Frank, blue and black. This color combination takes Blue's organization, Blue's control, Blue's want for control, and it takes it with Black's want for exploiting and from taking from others. And you combine that and you get a pair of people that, well, they just kind of want to take from anybody and they don't care who they take it for. This is easy to match up with Dennis and Frank because, again, this color combination shows up as evil very often in the game. So this is an example where I sit here and I describe it and you're like, oh, that's definitely Dennis and Frank. For example, in Season 7, Episode 4, Sweet Dee gets audited. This is the episode where I like to say, I like to bring up the quote where they start chanting, "Reason will prevail," if that helps you remember which one it is. And what happens is that Frank and Dennis get Charlie and Mac to start arguing about something, and that's part of their subterfuge and control, and they go in the back office and they start talking about cooking the books of the bar and making money on the side and doing, you know, subterfuge and planning to achieve what they want, a ruthlessness. And even the things that they specifically want from this kind of shows their colors, because Black Frank is doing it because, well, he wants money. That's what he does. He ran a sweatshop. You know, I would put it past him to cook account books for a small bar that nobody pays attention to. But Dennis says something very interesting that I'll point out. He says, "I don't want control. I want the illusion of control," which is part of Blue's thing. Blue is very blustery, you know. It's about the performance of the thing. It's about the illusion that it can put in front of it, the facade. You know, it doesn't want to actually have control over things. It just wants to pretend like it can, because pretending is part of Blue's color. Another example of their ruthlessness and their cruelness is kind of a similar mashup, and let's provide this one because, well, I have it written down, so why not? I'll read it off anyways. One of the newer episodes, very funny one, The Gang Hits the Slope, Season 11, Episode 3. A similar thing occurs where they team up and they want to win a race. They're, you know, making fun of 80s skiing movies, and they want to win a race so that they can be on the mountain and, you know, set up a ski resort. That's what Frank wants to do. He's gonna buy the mountain. He uses his wealth to control. And again, it's another converse to that. I will keep going in this pattern where I do an allied color combination and an enemy color combination. Is Dennis and Charlie. This is a very interesting combination. Blue and green. Blue is the color that green disagrees with the most. You know, as I said earlier, it agrees with all the colors mostly. You know, it shares a lot of attributes with them because it's willing to share that. But blue is the one color that it has a tough time understanding. It has a tough time coming to terms with. And this sometimes causes it to be awkward, and that's why sometimes the interactions between Dennis and Charlie are awkward. But the one thing that they do connect on is understanding things. You know, and blue-green specifically, as far as the game goes, they like to have a fascination with the world and with how it works and how everything comes together. And when that happens with two very cruel characters, they want to understand how everything works so they can get what they need from it. It's a little different than blue-black. It's not so much about extorting others to get it. It's about finding out about others, you know, and being the strong one that will prevail and come over it. Blue, instead of using the subterfuge that comes with black, it uses the strength of green instead. An example of this, a couple examples of this actually, is Season 2, Episode 8, The Gang Runs for Office. In this, Dennis becomes a politician, or, well, he's running to be a politician, he's running for office, and Charlie is his campaign manager. And this matches up with it, because they're understanding the people around them. You know, it takes that blue aspect of understanding society, but it's also, I'm strong, and I'm gonna win because I want to win, and that's what I need to do. And in fact, Charlie gets carried away with it, and he makes a bad transaction that he shouldn't because he wants to win, and that's all that he wants. But then Dennis, of course, they're very, again, like Blue, blustery and not actually wanting power, starts to realize the responsibilities that he'd have to take up from actually winning office, and, well, he gives up. And then nothing happens. Another color combination is Frank and Dee, black and red. Now this one's very interesting. This color combination has a few things about it. One of it is chaos, and I won't bring up any examples of this because I feel like every time Frank and Dee get together, well, things just always get a little weird. But one thing specifically about it that happens, because, you know, it's not all chaos, is that these two colors love to get obsessed with something. You know, black wants to do whatever it wants. You know, it doesn't like being told what to do. And, well, red doesn't like to be told what to do either. So what happens is that when they get obsessed with something, they're not willing to let it go, because they feel like if they should be able to do whatever they want, they should be able to, you know, become completely and utterly obsessed with something, to the point of insanity. A very good example of this is the $100 Baby episode, Season 2, Episode 5. In this, Frank wants to beat an old friend of his at a boxing match. But the old friend says, I don't box anymore, I have my daughter box. So then, you know, obviously they set up their daughters to do a boxing match, and Frank's just doing it at first because, you know, he's like, screw you, dude, I'm better than you, I never liked you anyways. But Dee does it because, well, she does the red thing, and she gets completely and utterly caught up in it. And she goes so crazy that, well, she even starts taking steroids. Yes, quite obsessed indeed. A little different from this, again, an enemy color combination, is Frank and Mac, black and white. This one is a very interesting combination because it's one of the color combinations that shares the least with each other. They disagree on a lot. Black says I should be able to do whatever I want, and white says, no, you have to do what needs to be done. There's an order to things. There's a structure to it. And black says, well, screw the structure. Who cares about the structure? But they do mash up on times when they want control. They want to understand things. And this is a good example, you know, it sounds like something that blue would do. Well, if you look at it, there's an ally color that this combination shares. White and black share an ally in blue. Usually with the enemy colored combinations like this, they meet up on something that they share in common, usually with the ally color. You know, it's something where they're like, well, you know, think of it like this. It's like, well, we're friends because, you know, we're friends with this middle person, and we both understand this about this middle person, and that's why we can see eye to eye on this. So they want control. They want to extort things. A good episode for this is Season 3, Episode 5, The Aluminum Monster versus Fatty Magoo. In this episode, Frank actually makes a sweatshop in the bottom, underneath the bar, and they start to make dresses. And what happens is that Frank's doing it because, well, obviously he wants money. He wants something from it. But Mac does this. He starts to run it with them because he wants to be a boss. He just wants to lord over people. And this is one of the evil aspects of white. even though they usually like things to be even on an even keel. The cruel thing about white is that, well, some people are just stronger than others, and that's just a fact that you have to deal with. And again, this is another aspect of Mac that fits very well with his connection with the color white. And this puts them at the top, and like being at the top. And they definitely lord over that sweatshop very, very menacingly. They sweat them out. A different example, going on to the next one, would be Dee and Charlie, red and green. When these two colors get together, they're usually about the freedom of choice. You know, the individual being able to do whatever they want. An episode that shows this is Charlie Goes America All Over Everybody's Ass. Season 2, Episode 9. In this, they discuss the topic of being able to smoke inside a bar. They want to ban it because at that point in time, I know, feels ages ago, 10 years ago at this point, almost, at least, maybe even more. At this point, that was when bars were starting to ban smoking all over America. So what happens is that Dee suggests this, and Charlie suggests this because they don't like it, you know. And this idea of them coming together to ban against something that they know is bad is a very good example of red-green sticking up for the little guy, or doing the right thing. At least, it's what they think is the right thing. Of course, they get caught up in it, and it goes haywire, and it becomes about acting and a bunch of other stuff, and, you know, they lose sight of the goal, as is usually the case with It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, but it still fits the theme of it. Also, another good example for Dee and Charlie, for red and green, is that that color is about passion, too, you know. Green is okay with things existing as they are and filling their role, and red believes that, you know, you do have a role, you do have a purpose in life that you need to go do. It doesn't think it's as restricted as green does, but it's something they agree on. And it's about pursuing passions. And that's why in the episode The Gang Misses the Boat, Season 10, Episode 6, what happens is that the gang sort of has a dissolution. They start to look at themselves. The episode's very meta. I think it's very interesting. Don't watch that one until you've seen the other ones. Of course, it is Season 10, so I doubt you will if you watch it in the correct order like you should. But the thing is that the gang separates up, but Charlie and Dee end up getting stuck together. And they sort of go off on their own, and they're like, you know what, we should do what we want to do instead of always being trodden on by the others. And this is something that is actually a very specific attribute about red and green, is that the other three colors are very oppressive colors. You know, they center around blue, because again, red and green are the enemies of blue, the two enemies of blue. So they see eye to eye on not being controlled. And what happens is that the other three colors are oppressive colors, so when they disappear and they're out of the picture, now they're just left to, you know, kind of do whatever they want. And this is sort of overwhelming at first, but eventually they decide, you know what, let's become Def Jam poets, because that's awesome. And as Dee so eloquently puts, black people don't do things that aren't cool, so of course we should do Def Jam poetry. What happens is they actually get really good at it, and this is a very good example of an aspect of red and green where they like to follow their passions. They like to follow, you know, what makes them them. You know, they want to do what they want to do for fun, not necessarily for any negative gains. It's one of the very few moments in Always Sunny in Philadelphia where it's not fueled by narcissism or any other cruel actions, as is usually the case with the show. It's very wholesome, actually. I really like Miss the Boat. That's one of my favorite episodes. Another combination is Dee and Dennis, the two siblings, blue and red. Now this combination is very, very, very self-centered. It's very big-headed. Red believes in, it should do whatever it wants to do, and nobody should tell it what to do. It's about freedom. Fire should be able to go wherever it should go. And blue thinks that life should be about options. It wants to understand the options, but there should be a variety there. Too much stagnation is bad, but control is good. And this leads to a mentality of each individual has its own power, its own, every individual is like a blank slate, and they can become the best they can become. Again, that's the idea of grandeur that I was speaking about earlier. When this comes together, this creates big-headedness, and these two characters, boy, are they big-headed. They think they are amazing. An episode, Dennis and Dee go on welfare, shows this very well. It's season 2, episode 3. What happens is that it's actually in the name. They end up going on welfare, Dennis and Dee. But before they do that, before they go on welfare, they say, "We got big dreams. We're gonna go places. We're gonna get out of this crappy bar. We're gonna become amazing people." And well, they go on welfare and get addicted to crack. So, yeah, that's what happens with that. And well, that is a good example of red and blue. Sometimes they get distracted, they get too caught up in something, and they get pulled away by their vices. Their vices suddenly become something that's more important. And again, this is what I was talking about earlier with enemy colors. Each enemy color combination has a color that they share. They have an ally that they meet with. And black, again, is about doing whatever you want. So one of the vices of blue and red is that they give in to their vices, doing whatever they want, which is, of course, a black thing to do whatever they want. There's another example of this. In Season 3, Episode 8, Frank sets Sweet Dee on fire. Dennis and Dee are trying to get into the party scene. They're trying to become famous. They want to show up places and be important and show how amazing they are. And, of course, it doesn't work. Why would it? It's not an upbeat show. It would never work for them. But this is just another example of they're trying to be amazing, and they're just trying way too hard to do it. So we're getting close to the end here. Don't worry. Last few combinations. One of them is Charlie and Mac, green and white. When green and white get together, they have this strange understanding of how order works. But there's also a lot of honesty between them. As I said earlier, white is a very honest color. It's very upfront. Green is the only other color that's completely and utterly honest. And again, this shows them as the enemies of black. They don't stand for subterfuge or underhanded designs to achieve their goals. They think that just by brute strength and their own powers, they will achieve their goals. Not only that, but they're very close friends too. Charlie and Mac are both very, very, very close friends. They've lived in squalor and lower class together their entire lives, and they understand that they're both weird people. Is how I was saying earlier that white is an annoying color, but its honesty allows it to be friends with others, or allows it to be friends with its ally colors at the very least. Red and black don't put up with their crap, but that's a whole different thing. An example of Charlie and Mac's friendship is an episode, aptly enough, titled Mac and Charlie White Trash, Season 6, Episode 5. In this episode, they try to get into a pool because it's hot outside. It's the summer. but they don't want to go to the public pool because it's quote-unquote disgusting. And they try to go into a private pool where, you know, you need a membership and you need sponsors to get in. And obviously they get denied because they don't have any sponsors. And, you know, they top it off with throwing some beer cans and at the person working there and all that fun, very charming things that they do. And what happens is that they go to the old diving pool, which they liked because there wasn't many kids there and was really deep. But a kid died there long ago and it got closed down, and now it's basically just an empty lot with a bunch of trash in it and a swimming pool with no water in it. What happens is that Charlie and Mac get the idea to fix this up. And although they have this somewhat good idea to fix up the community and make an improvement to it, obviously it goes south. But that is an example of white and green's relationship. You know, they want to improve things. They understand that there is a system, but everything needs to take part in that system and sort of uphold it. You know, they believe in protection of hearth and home. They're both very patriotic people too. You know, they believe in America. That's as is the title of the episode I told you earlier, which is Charlie Goes America All Over Everybody's Ass. You know, I think that's a good testament to their idea of protecting, as Mac says in another episode, rock, flag, and eagle. And last, but again, definitely not least, is Charlie and Frank's relationship. Green and black. Now, this is an enemy color combination, but as I said earlier, green shares a lot of attributes with all of the other colors, and its enemy color combinations are a little less, I guess you could say, enemy-ish than the other combinations, but especially with black and green. And the reason why is because black is also a color about death. It's about the end of things. And green is a color about nature. And nature is very okay with life and death. And when you combine that with black, you have this sort of need for recycling, as well as this understanding of the grand scheme of nature and the fact that, well, sometimes things just need to die. The strong survive and the weak die. Green can understand this very easily. It understands nature. Again, it is the color of nature. So they match very well, which is why Charlie and Frank are very, very, very close friends as well in the show. In fact, I'd say that they become closer friends than Charlie and Mac do, even though they start out, very good friends at the start of the show. Frank kind of swoops in and takes that role as they live together. And what happens is that this relationship is shown through the squalor and just the weird things that Frank and Charlie do throughout the entire show. For example, in the episode The Gang Finds a Dumpster Baby, Season 3, Episode 1, there becomes a part where Charlie and Frank visit a dump, and they see the items that are there, some of them that are hanging around, and they think they're amazing. They think they're awesome. So what they do is they start hoarding this trash. They bring it back to their house, and eventually it starts crowding them out, and they become so in love with all this trash that it starts to hurt them. But all these examples of living in squalor, living in trash, and doing all these things is an example of black and green. They are okay with living in trash as long as they get what they want, as long as things continue to operate as they should. They're okay with it. Not only that, but the relationship in and of itself is a good example. The way they interact with each other is a good example of black and green. Black is an exploiter, and green sometimes will give in to being an exploitee. Again, it's the strong and the weak. It's okay with subservience in certain aspects. In Season 8, Episode 7, Frank's back in business. Frank gets asked to become a businessman again, something that he had given up since the 80s. he dresses like a classic 80s businessman too, with the weird pink shirt and the suspenders, which I think is hilarious too. But you gotta see the episode for that. But Frank becomes the mentor, and then Charlie is the mentee. You know, the top and the bottom, and this center aspect right here of this relationship, it goes throughout the entire show. You can see it every time they interact. You know, Frank does take advantage of Charlie in certain parts, and sometimes Charlie is not even completely aware of it. But this is also, again, another aspect of their relationship as black and green. So, with that, those are all the 2 color combinations, and that is my evidence for this theory. I know, I hope it wasn't too much for you guys. I know I dragged it on there for a little bit, but I think it's very interesting. I think it's a cool thing to see, and honestly, you can take this aspect of Magic the Gathering and the colors and how they match up with personalities. You know, like I said very, very early in the video, is that I like to match it up with many things. You know, I like to match it up with people that I meet. But it matches to a bunch of other aspects. For example, some of the articles that I link in the description, the guy, Mark Rosewater, who writes all the articles that I link, there are some of them that describe the colors specifically. You know, it just describes the attributes of those colors. I definitely recommend reading those, because that explains the colors more, and maybe you can find more examples than other ones that I just brought up here. But in that, he has a list of characters from popular fiction at the end of every single article that represent that color. And one that he does, now, I'm not a big fan of this show, but he uses each one of the 5 main characters of The Simpsons. And they do actually fit. They fit very well. Even though I have not seen much of the show, I can definitely see where he's coming from as far as how they match up. Not only that, but it fits with anything. Guardians of the Galaxy. There's a few examples that he has for each of those, but those actually all match up too. But yeah, this matches up with a lot of other pieces of media, and I'd like to see anything that you guys come up with that maybe would match this. Parks and Rec is another example. I'd actually like to do that one day. I have a very interesting theory about that one. But yeah, I think that's about it for now. I've talked your ear off long enough. I'm sure you're getting sick of listening to my voice, but yes, go forth with this knowledge. Go forth and spread the word about the color pie and how it matches everything, and it encompasses everything in our entire existence. And now I hope that I am not alone, as you now will all not be able to unsee the match between the color combinations and It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. This is my curse to you all. Thank you for listening, and have a great day.